My name is Lisa, and I am here from the Clinton-Macomb Public Library, and this is our first episode of Kitchen Science, hosted by Miss Brittany. Many of you kids may recognize Miss Brittany from coming out to your schools and doing some of our read aloud challenges, but today she's inviting you into her kitchen to show you some great new experiments. Here's Miss Brittany.
Hi everyone. So as she said, my name is Miss Brittany and I'm one of the school outreach librarians. So you may have seen me in your school, and today we are going to have some fun with science. So we are going to take everyday kitchen ingredients and we are going to turn them into science. We're going to do three main things. We are going to use cornstarch and water to make a non-Newtonian fluid. We are going to follow one of those super fun Facebook recipes that's been going around to make some DIY sidewalk chalk Puffy Pink. And before we do any of that, we're going to get our science brains warmed up, and we are going to play a very quick game of sink or float. I have picked 4 everyday objects from my kitchen. Actually, really, they're from my household. And we are going to take a minute and we're going to guess whether or not these objects sink or float. Now, if you don't know what the definition of sink is, if you're a little bit younger and maybe you've never played this game before, when something sinks, it's going to go under the water and it's going to land on the bottom. When something floats, it's going to stay above the water and it's going to float right at the top. So our very first item, you can't even see it because it's so small, is just a run-of-the-mill bobby pin. It's very lightweight, it's very small, and so whoever you're doing this with, or maybe you're doing it by yourself in your head, or with your family, go ahead now and guess whether or not you're going to think that if this sinks or floats. I'll give you 5 seconds to make your guesses. Ready? 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Let's see if it sinks or floats. And that's going to sink right down to the bottom. All right. Our next object is going to be a small can of CocaCola. This is just 7.5 fluid ounces, so if you've had a regular size can, it's a little bit bigger than that. But again, we're gonna put it in, and we're gonna see if it sinks or floats. Is this going to be more or less dense than water? So at first it seems like it sinks, but it does stay in there as a float. All right, we'll take that out, and we're gonna do our next item, which is going to be a smaller version of the Tupperware that we're sinking this in. So we have this, we are going to put it right in, and I will give you again 5 seconds to guess whether or not this is going to sink or float. So let's go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it floats. But what happens if I put some of that water in there? Is it gonna? Yes, it does. It sinks down to the bottom, but it still kind of stays bobbing on top until we overflow it. All right, and our very last item we're going to try out to sink or float is just going to be one of those peeps that you may have gotten in one of your baskets this year, and we are going to see if it sinks or floats. So once again, make your guesses. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it does float. All right, very good. Okay, now that we got our scientific minds warmed up, we are going to go into one of the most fun activities I can possibly think of, and that is non-Newtonian fluid. Now, if you've ever done this experiment before, you might have a tiny bit of experience with it, but we need to know what Newtonian fluid is before we start playing around with non-Newtonian fluid. So Newtonian fluid is a fluid where the viscosity does not change its rate of flow. Now, viscosity is when you pour something, how fast it pours out. So with a Newtonian fluid, it's always going to have a constant rate of flow. So we just saw our water. If we were to pour out our water, unless we were to freeze it or put heat in it, it's always going to stay that same rate of flow, and it's always going to be pretty simple. Doesn't matter how much you mix it. It doesn't matter how much you manipulate it. It's going to always have that same rate of flow, which makes it a Newtonian fluid. But with non-Newtonian fluids, you're going to see something fun happen where it's maybe a solid and maybe it's a liquid. So to do this, we're going to need a couple things. You're going to need an object. I have a big bowl so you can see better. But if you're using just a little bit of cornstarch, a small bowl is gonna work just fine. So I have a big bowl, and I have about a pound of cornstarch. Now, a quick note before you use all your cornstarch, you're gonna wanna save a little. And the reason is this requires 2 parts cornstarch for 1 part water. But sometimes you might put just a little bit too much water. So if you save some cornstarch, if you do add too much water, you're able to add in a little bit of that cornstarch back in. So I'm gonna open up my cornstarch. And if you are following along and find that you don't have any cornstarch or not enough cornstarch in your kitchen, don't worry, this is gonna be available for you to watch later. And you can try this experiment later on. And I don't know if you can see all the cornstarch in the air, but there's a lot of it. So I put my whole bag in, and that's because I have a little bit of cornstarch on the side for it. But now that I've got my cornstarch, I have pre-measured out what looks to be about 2 cups of water. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start by pouring in water. And my helper here is gonna get the camera a little bit closer. And I'm gonna pour about half of my water in just to get an idea. Now, before I touch this to mix, it's really important that you have clean hands for non-Newtonian fluid, because any moisture or oil that you have on your hands can actually affect the way that this works. So I'm gonna wash my hands. My helper is gonna let you look at this fluid for a second to see what it looks like before I start mixing. And if you want, you can take this time to wash your hands at home if you're following along. And you can get your hands ready for mixing. But again, if you're doing this on your own later, just keep in mind that your hands do have to be as clean as you can get them. Now, I added, like I said, about a cup of that water. I don't know exactly how much water I'm gonna need, but I'm gonna start by just sticking my hands right in there and going ahead and getting it mixed. Now, this is clearly not enough water, so I'm gonna add a ton more because I don't even have enough to get it a little bit wet so far. Enough. We're gonna add just the whole 2 cups, just about. Still think we need a little bit more. I'm gonna get it mixing. So at this point, your hands, if you're doing this along with me, your hands are probably a little bit messy, and it actually pretty quickly turns into liquid, which is why I suggest having that cornstarch on hand, because it does quickly get to the point where you have just too much liquid in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna rinse off my hands so I can add a little bit more cornstarch in there. And we're gonna get mixing again. Probably still needs a little bit more, wouldn't you say? All right, it's starting to get to the texture where it's acting as a non-Newtonian fluid, but it's still not quite there. So I'm gonna keep mixing, but if you're doing this at home, you might notice that the texture of this is pretty similar to slime. And it's kind of, I'm not gonna lie, a little bit gross, but it's also super fun. So the way you know that your mixture is ready and it's turned into a non-Newtonian fluid, a good tip of it is if you can make a ball with your hand and then it turns into liquid. So as you can see, I can make it into a solid by making a ball in my hand. So I pretty much achieved the point where it's a non-Newtonian fluid. All right, I think just a little bit more. All right, I'm gonna add this in. All right, so let's get this mixed. It does get harder to mix the more it turns into this concoction almost. But now I have that solid in my hand that turns into that liquid. All right, so something really cool about this mixture is that if you put pressure on it, it's going to act different than if you're gentle with it. So I'm gonna rinse off my hands one more time. And this time I'm gonna try to punch my non-Newtonian fluid. Now I wouldn't suggest at home punching very many things in your house, but we're gonna give this a really good, and if you look, I don't know if you could see that, but if you look at it, My fist does not go through that at all. It stays right on top. No matter how many times I punch it, I can't get any. My hand's pretty much clean except for what I already had on it. But if I go really gently into this and I just put my hand over it, my hand sinks right into it. So non-Newtonian fluid, particularly this kind of non-Newtonian fluid, is really going to react based off of the amount of pressure that you put on it. And it's going to change. And that's why it doesn't follow those rules of viscosity, where it's going to have the same rate of viscosity no matter the amount of pressure you put on it, like water does. It's different depending on the pressure you put on it. So again, if I punch it really hard, nothing is really going to happen. And if you're trying this at home, maybe you have a smaller bowl that you use, you can probably see that just applying pressure. I have seen videos of people taking hammers to this and not getting anywhere in it, and then sinking their hand into it, or even if you have a really big bowl, sinking your feet into this and being able to get that kind of pressure. So this is fun to play with. I am going to let you play with it a little bit later after we're finished with this Facebook Live. But let me put this to the side for now, and I'm going to get my hands washed off so we can do our next activity. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is, like I said, I've been seeing a recipe for Puffy Pink going around Facebook, and I really wanted to see if that's a recipe that would actually work. And so today I brought all those ingredients, and I tried it out earlier today, and I'm here to tell you that it does work. And if you use the Puffy Pink, eventually it does get hard on the concrete, which is really cool, because if you're waiting for sidewalk chalk to come in the mail or something along those lines, and you really want some, this is a really excellent way to make sure that you're able to still play outside. And I will caution you, if you're making this today with me, it is pretty cold outside, and this recipe only is good for 24 hours. Any longer than that, it can explode out of your squeegee bottle, or it can harden. So you're going to want to make sure that the day that you make this is the day that you're using it. And for this, you're going to need 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of water, some type of liquid dish soap, just a tablespoon of that, and then squeezy bottles or Ziploc bags. Old ketchup bottles are really good for this, or if you have an old barbecue sauce bottle, anything that you can use to squeeze out. You can do this the old-fashioned way with frosting, where you just cut the tip off and then you're able to use it just like you would a squeezy bottle. But I actually picked these up from Meijer for about like $4 or $5. And they probably sell them at the dollar store too. So if you're interested in something a little bit more easy to get the fine detail, that's going to be your best bet. But how we're going to do this is, like I said, we're going to start with 1 cup of flour. I'm going to pour it in. And then I'm going to take my 1 cup of water. I'm going to pour that in as well. And I'm going to start by just mixing this until all of my lumps are out of this mixture. So get a good mixture going. So if you've gotten most of the lumps out, you can start getting your dish soap ready. And like I said before, you're going to need about a tablespoon of any type of dish soap. I chose a clear dish soap just so any of the color that's in it doesn't come out of my product. I'll be honest, I haven't tried it with a colored dish soap, so I don't know if the food coloring is going to overpower any color in your dish soap. But this is pretty good on most. So I'm going to take my tablespoon measure, and remember the tablespoon is the TBE, and I'm going to go ahead and fill 1 of them. And I'm going to add in my soap right into it, and you're going to mix 1 more time. So you're going to mix until that, and you're going to see that it's going to start to bubble up a little bit more. And then you're going to take food coloring, and you can choose whatever food coloring. Now this mixture does work for 1 spoon. If you maybe want to put this mixture in half, you add the food coloring would be the time to do that. And you could put it in half and do 2 different colors with this, or you could just make another batch of it. Add glue to this. Now the recipe calls for about 5 to 10 drops of liquid food coloring. I'm using a gel food coloring, and if you don't have food coloring at all in your house, you can grate up a piece of or sidewalk chalk right into this, and it'll turn the color of that sidewalk chalk. I haven't tried that yet, but you can if you're desperate. We're just gonna put a little bit in here because like I said, I have gel and there's really not a great way to toppers to this. So I'm gonna just keep mixing until I get my preferred color. And you can do the same if you do have the liquid. It's gonna be just a little bit easier, but this is very easily turning a great color of blue. And the darker I want it, the more food coloring I can add to it. But this is gonna be a good color of blue. Now, when we're mixing everything together, you can take your squeegee bottle, or if you're using a Ziploc, you can take the Ziploc, and you can go ahead and pour this into it. I'm gonna do this very carefully. And you can close it up. And then, like I said, you're gonna cut the tip, and you can use this, you would use Puffy Pink, but of course on your driveway. It does get hard after a few hours. I do recommend maybe doing this in a place where you can rinse it if you're going to in the next couple of days, but it's gonna work just like chalk. And despite my husband's observation, it has not died with it yet. So thank you guys so much for tuning into Kitchen Science. If you're interested in programs, visit cmpl.org and tune into virtual CMPL, where you can find a list of things that we're doing along with ebooks and audiobooks that you can read at home. And next month, join me on May 15th, where we're going to be doing another edition of Kitchen Science. Thank you guys.